Welcome back to Australia's Pioneering Saints. Today's episode, When Reason Hits a Ceiling. What do you do when logic says no, but something deeper says go? September 7, 1855, a vessel left Sydney with 56 passengers, half of whom were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For more than a century, the story of the Julia Ann shipwreck survived only in fragments, scattered letters, and incomplete accounts. We knew the tragedy had struck, but we lacked a true understanding of the desperate weeks that followed. For years, I searched libraries and archives for more details. Then, in a moment that felt less like research and more like providence, I found myself browsing the deserted rows of the BYU library one afternoon. In the back of a dusty volume, a name jumped off the page: Captain Benjamin Pond. I'd stumbled on his 1858 published narrative, extraordinarily rare, with only a few copies known to survive. I knew I was likely the first member of the church to lay eyes on this narrative from over 130 years ago. That discovery became the foundation for my article, The Wreck of the Julia Ann, published in BYU Studies in 1989. Let me take a moment to give you a brief overview of the wreck itself. October 4, 1855. Captain Benjamin Pond's charts said they were 16 miles clear of land. His charts were wrong. The ship slammed into a coral reef. The stern swung broadside. 20-foot waves of water broke over the deck. The ship began tearing itself apart. In the chaos, 5 members of the church died. Among them, 2 10-year-old girls. The survivors spent the night on the rocks with sharks moving in the dark water around them. For nearly 3 months, they survived on a deserted island, a narrow strip of land in the middle of the Pacific, nothing else for hundreds of miles in any direction. They ate crabs, clams and turtles. They filtered seawater to make it drinkable. The women made pancakes from salvaged flour and turtle eggs. But by December, the reef was stripped bare, and the food salvaged from the ship was gone. Captain Pond knew with grim certainty that rescue was a fantasy. Their island lay so far beyond the travelled lanes of any ship. To wait was to die. The only question was how slowly. Pond had 2 impossible options. Option 1, sail west, 1,500 miles with the wind. Chief Officer Coffin, a veteran whaler, supported this plan. It really was the only route that made nautical sense. Option 2, row east, 200 plus miles, directly into the teeth of the trade winds, in an overcrowded boat and no margin for error. Coffin, the veteran whaler, didn't mince words. He called it suicide. He said he'd rather die on the island than board that boat. The captain agreed. Pond himself wrote in his journal that night, "My own spirit seemed crushed. I felt like one going to the stake." Pond went to his tent, believing it was for the last time, feeling unhappy and without hope. He couldn't sleep. Then, inexplicably, he changed his mind. He announced they were going east. When I first published this story, I quoted Pond's 1858 edited narrative. He described his reversal as a, quote, gloomy, undefined premonition. That never sat right with me. An experienced captain doesn't gamble 50 lives on a premonition. That's just not how command at sea works. It also seemed out of character for Pond. So why did he abandon a plan backed by his chief officer and flip to a decision that defied every nautical principle of the time? With no further clarification, my questions would remain unanswered. Fast forward 8 years. The editor at BYU Studies contacted me about revising the article for a new anthology titled Coming to Zion. Up to this point, I'd been working from the 1858 sanitised account. I went back to the archives without much hope of finding anything new. I was wrong, and what I found changed everything I thought I knew. Captain Pond's original handwritten journal had surfaced. Most of it matched what I already knew, but one critical passage, deleted from the published version, hidden for nearly 140 years, it stopped me cold. I read it twice. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. Pond writes, in his own hand, the following: My passengers were mostly Mormons bound for Salt Lake City. One of their elders had a dream or vision. He sees the boat successfully launched upon her long voyage, and for a day or two, making satisfactory progress. Another leaf in the vision, and the boat is seen floating bottom up, and the drowned bodies of the crew floating around her. The crew heard it, and that was the end of the plan. No man would volunteer. All the nautical logic in the world meant nothing now, compared to the vision. John McCarthy, young, untrained, no charts, no compass, no rank, had effectively vetoed the captain's plan. And Pond's response tells you everything about how annoyed and helpless he felt. There should be no more visions told in public, unless they're favourable ones, and first submitted to me for approval. Let's just pause for a moment and think about that. A ship's captain issuing a formal policy about prophecy. Days passed. Then McCarthy came back. He'd seen another vision, a second leaf as he called it. In this one, the boat departed with 10 men, rowed east for 3 days, and found a friendly island, a vessel to save them all. East? Directly into the trade winds? Pond needed 10 rowers. He had 9, including himself. He looked at McCarthy. He didn't ask about theology. He asked the only question that matters when you're dying on a reef. Do you believe your vision? Yes, indeed, McCarthy said. Was it not a revelation from God? Pond looked at him and said, Then get in the boat. Now, notice something interesting about Pond's question. He never said he believed the vision, not once. Instead, he asked McCarthy a different question. Do you believe it? In other words, Pond wasn't testing theology. He was testing commitment. McCarthy had told the crew the first voyage had killed them. Now he was telling them this voyage would save them. Pond's response was simple. Do you believe it enough to stake your life on it? Then get in the boat. McCarthy stepped forward without hesitation. Of course I will, Pond continues, and he did so with enthusiasm. And thus my crew was completed in the most unlikely manner. If McCarthy was wrong, he wouldn't just lose credibility, he'd drown with the rest of them. For 3 days, 10 men rowed east into the trade winds. Their palms cracked and bled. Their arms went numb. A storm hit. At one point, they lay exhausted at the bottom of the boat, unable to row, entirely at the mercy of the sea. In those moments, it must have seemed like the vision had failed. Then someone saw it. Land. High volcanic peaks rising out of the sea. They'd reached Bora Bora. But for the survivors left behind on the reef, the nightmare wasn't over. They didn't know if the boat had vanished. They waited for 80 days, nearly 3 months, scanning a blank horizon, until finally a rescue vessel crested the waves. Pond wasn't a religious visionary. He was a New England sea captain, a professional known for hard practicality and disciplined skepticism, not someone inclined to exaggerate. And yet, this is what he wrote in his own hand. You have heard the account of how literally his dream was fulfilled, against every probability. I can simply vouch for the facts, without any attempt to argue or explain. Pond couldn't explain it, and he didn't even want to try. Here's why that matters. Pond was not a member of the church. In 1858, the church was marginalised and embattled. Publishing a Mormon miracle in 1858 would have not helped his reputation. His editors knew that. They cut it out to protect him, but Pond kept it in his private journal, documenting a miracle he simply could not ignore. And now, while early church history is full of testimonies from the faithful, Pond is the exception to the rule. He wasn't a believer. In fact, he had every reason to look the other way. It's incredibly rare to find a man of prominence who lived by logic and hard facts, writing down a miracle that could have ruined his reputation. We all face moments when logic pulls one way and something deeper pulls another. I think there's a real honesty in the way Captain Pond handles this. He doesn't try to preach to us, and he doesn't try to explain it away. He just leaves us standing right where he was, face to face with something he couldn't make sense of. I can simply vouch for the facts, without any attempt to argue or explain.